네, 안녕하세요. 저는 파이낸셜뉴스 산업부 최종근 기자입니다. 오늘은 AI 월드 2024 행사를 맞이해서 스토리 프로토콜의 공동 창업자인 제임스 자오와 인터뷰 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 간단히 자기소개 좀 부탁드리고 어떤 회사인지 소개 좀 부탁드립니다.
Thank you for having me here. I'm Jason. I'm one of the co-founders of Story. And at Story, we're building IP infrastructure for the age of AI. Just to share a little bit more about my background and how that leads to what we're doing at Story. I was the youngest product manager at DeepMind. So DeepMind is Google's AI research lab. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to take some of the research coming out of these world-leading models like AlphaZero and AlphaGo, which played Lee Sedol here in Korea, and showcase the power of AI. One of the things I noticed when I was at DeepMind was that one of the biggest unsolved questions in AI research was actually not about performance or cost or efficiency, but actually about how do you actually monetize IP? It's actually a very interesting legal and economic and moral question about how AI can continue to improve in a world where everyone's content is being used. And so around the same time, I started really diving deep into blockchain technologies and decided to build something in the blockchain space for AI. And that's when I met my co-founder, Sung-Yoon Lee. And so together we had this shared vision to use blockchain to help creators and help applications protect their IP in the age of AI. And what that means is allowing every piece of content on the internet to actually state the terms for how others, whether that's a person, whether that's a program, whether that's an AI model, can use that IP. And that can be as extreme as you can't use it at all. So if you're AI, you can't use my IP, or it can be some sort of economic terms around if you use my data or my voice or my style in AI training, then you have to compensate me when you generate revenue. And we think that this model is much more sustainable because it allows creators to be able to monetize their IP, but also allows people to extend it with AI. And AI can then be used as a force for good in helping creators grow their work rather than something that's taking their creativity.
그래서 그 스토리 프로토콜이라고 회사를 좀 지은 이유가 궁금하거든요.
That's a great question. Actually, no one has ever asked that. So the idea behind Story is that, we think that every IP tells a story, right? And that if you think about how media and culture grows, it usually starts with a narrative, and then that narrative or that story can evolve into, let's say, a comic book or into a song or into a movie or a game. But what's uniting all of these, what's at the very base layer of all of the IP is some sort of story. Ultimately, the reason why we called the company Story is because we think that it encompasses the sort of underlying nature of what we're trying to do, because we're trying to build infrastructure that other people can build on top of and tell their story, whether that's an image, whether that's a song, whether that's a game. I think that flexibility and that underlying nature is what we wanted to capture in the name.
구글 딥마인드라는 굉장히 세계적인 회사에서 근무하시다가 이 대표님을 만나서 갑자기 창업에 나서게 된 계기가 좀 따로 있으실지 궁금합니다.
Yeah, well, while I was at DeepMind, there's two things that I got really excited about, or I should say three things. The first is, like I mentioned before, the problem of IP seemed to me very broad. And actually, I don't think anyone in AI is actually thinking too deeply about this. So at the same time, I started researching blockchain technologies, and it seemed like what blockchains do is provide value and scarcity in a world where AI is going to create infinite abundance. Because when everyone has the ability to create content, then how do you know which content is original, which content has value, who should get compensated? And I think blockchains are perfect at being the global database or tracking for that problem. So that was number one. It was sort of an interesting problem that drew me away from the AI research I was doing and towards this blockchain technology, which is related to AI. The second is that my passion has always been, how do you take very abstract technical research and translate it into a tangible product that people can use? So even at DeepMind, my role was take this AlphaZero, AlphaGo, and actually make it a product that people can use, take the research. And so what I thought was exciting about blockchain is that research to product cycle is much faster. So someone can publish a research white paper in 3 months. There's now millions of users and millions of people using it. And anyone can build on top of that. Anyone can use that code because it's totally open. And so the speed of development is very fast. And then the third reason is, in university, I went to Stanford and I studied philosophy. And so I'm really fascinated by how AI and blockchain and other technologies have political and philosophical implications for society. And, one thing that really struck me when I was researching blockchain from the technical perspective was that it's also very philosophically interesting. So if you think about the original pioneers of the technology, they were all very motivated by a specific libertarian ideology. But today, if you fast forward and look at what people in the blockchain space are talking about now, they're talking about how do we govern these protocols? How do we govern these companies in a decentralized way? Some people are even talking about how do we create decentralized countries, right? And so I think the interesting thing is that blockchains bring in a lot of different intellectual elements and intellectual schools together. Even when those schools disagree, I think that there's just so much conversation, and there's also an intellectual interest that I have in what this technology could do. But ultimately, despite the very fast research and despite the interesting philosophical elements, I found that there was no real mainstream use cases for blockchain. And that really excited me because it meant that there's a huge opportunity waiting to be built. So that's kind of what gave me the belief to transition from DeepMind to build Story with SY.
스토리 프로토콜만의 가장 큰 다른 국가의 장점, 좀 독보적인 것, 그런 게 있다면 어떤 게 있는지 말씀 좀 부탁드립니다.
Yeah, I think what we're doing is quite unique, and that's one of the things that excites me about it. If you look at the blockchain space, really, it's very focused on money. So you think about Bitcoin as a digital gold, you think about stable coins as a way to easily pay people across the world. And I think these are really important innovations, but so much money, so much research, and so much time has been spent focused on blockchains as a financial technology. And our vision at Story is to be the first to really use blockchains as a media and content technology. So we always ask ourselves, what can blockchains do beyond money? Because at the end of the day, you think about blockchains or you think about adoption and what people actually spend their time on. People don't spend 5 hours a day looking at their bank account go up and down, right? That's not a normal human thing to do. What people do is they spend a lot of time on TikTok, Kakao, WeChat, YouTube, right? They spend their time consuming and creating content. And so our thesis is that if blockchains are going to be adopted and their benefits are going to be felt by many, many people, that needs to go through something else. And so we're focused on IP. And so from the competitive perspective, there's actually not many people trying to do as ambitious of a vision as us. A lot of efforts to make IP simpler. There are individual applications. So within one app, you might be able to easily license, different assets within that single application. But what we're trying to do is to build a sort of underlying infrastructure for the entire internet. So if an IP is registered on this first app number 1, that would instantly pop up in every other app that's using Story. And so that network effect is what we're trying to build. And so as more and more IPs get registered, every single app can see those IPs and pay those IPs and use those IPs if their users want to. So that's our vision. I think that's actually quite unique. And in terms of, what I'm the most excited about within Story that makes me feel like, we're on the right path is that the quality of our team. At the end of the day, any early stage company, you're going to have many different pivots. You're going to change direction. You're going to realize you made some mistakes. And I think that the one constant is that you have a really strong team. And I think that we have really amazing technical leaders. Our CTO is actually the first engineer and the VP of engineering at Harmony, which was a very popular layer 1 blockchain that was very successful. So he's actually built like a blockchain before, and now he's doing it again with Story. And I think, there's many such cases of people on our team who have actually been very, very successful in the space. And now they're doing it for the second or third time, including SY, of course, having built a very successful business. And so I think that what, makes me very confident as an advantage is the strength of our vision and how unique it is, but also even more importantly, the strength of the team, because we will have to, zig and zag and change courses a lot. And so the team is the one constant behind all of that.
얼마 전에 기자간담회 하신 거 보니까 그 스토리 프로토콜을 지식재산권의 레고랜드로 이렇게 만드는 것을 목표로 하고 있다고 말씀을 하신 걸 들었는데 그 부분에 대해서 좀 더 자세한 설명 좀 부탁드립니다.
Absolutely. So when we talk about IP Legos, it's obviously an abstract concept and we're trying to make it simpler. The idea is that right now, if you look at any piece of content that you see on social media, on any app that you're using, it's pretty much static and it's trapped. So it's designed to be in one place and it's just a media file. So if I go and see an image I like, I don't know who owns it. I don't know if I can use it. And even the app that it's on, it's just stuck there on that one single app. Our vision is that we can transform these sort of static media files into IP Legos. And what that means is that every single piece of content that you see, you actually know exactly how much it costs to use, exactly who created it, all the relevant information. And if you wanted to use it and meet the creator's terms, you could do that on the app that you're already on, or on any other application that's already integrated with Story. So now you can think about these IPs as building blocks, because you're able to build on top of them. You're able to take maybe 2 different characters from 2 different apps and make a third comic on a third app. And then if that comic generates revenue, then everyone who is involved would get paid. And so the idea of building this IP Legoland is, well, imagine the internet when every single piece of content has those properties, has that information. And it's not just other people that are able to read that information. It's actually other software developers, right? They can actually use code to manage these IPs, or even AI trainers. They can scrape the internet, and then they can see that, this content costs this much to use, this database costs that much to use. And so now you have this ability for IP to move frictionlessly at high velocity across different applications and to monetize across the entire internet. So that's what we mean by IP Legoland. It's a whole ecosystem of applications built on top of Story where IP can move and monetize frictionlessly.
플랫폼 확장을 위해서 또 좀 직면하고 있는 과제 또는 해결해야 될 과제도 있을 것 같은데 그 부분에 대해서 말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there's 2 parts to our mission. The first is what you mentioned, which is defending and protecting creators. So that's allowing them to say, don't use this IP. But actually what I'm most excited about and what I think is most unique is what we're enabling creators to grow. So it's not just defense and stay off my lawn. It's actually, how do I frictionlessly grow my IP? How do I tap into a community that actually wants to use my IP, and they're actually going to help create content for me, and we're both going to be able to win together? Because right now, IP is usually only used by big companies to defend their IP, right? So if you're a big studio, if you're Disney, you want to use, your lawyers to prevent other people from using your IP. So people think about IP as just purely defense. But I actually think, if we give IP and really powerful tools to the hands of individual creators, it's not even about, protecting their IP. They're actually going to use this tool to grow and to build networks and scale their IP. And so what we're allowing them to do in many ways is also to monetize and to build a community as well. So that's a little bit on the vision. In terms of the challenges, I think there are a number of challenges. The biggest one is, in general, when you're trying to build an ecosystem, you have to solve the cold start problem. And the cold start problem is basically, think about any social network. If you have 5 people on Facebook, it's not very useful. If you have 100 people on Facebook, it's still not that useful. But if you have 1 million people on Facebook, then all of a sudden, Facebook becomes a very, very interesting place to be, and more people are going to want to join Facebook. So the question is, in the early days, from 5 to 100 to 1,000, how do you actually get those first 1,000 people to join? And I think Story is a similar thing. If we have, all the world's IP, then every app will want to integrate, because every app will want to have access to all that great content and be able to allow their users to use that content and build on it. But if you only have a few apps, then you have to make a very, very strong value proposition to those first 5, 10, 100 apps and 100 creators, and to get them onboarded. So right now, I think our biggest challenge is, can we, manually almost support all of these different partners in a very, very close way and show them how valuable Story can be, so that they will evangelize our product and actually bring on more creators and more apps into the ecosystem. Once we hit a certain point, just like when you have 1 million users on Facebook, then it just becomes a product that sells itself. But I think right now we have to solve the cold start problem as a company.
그러면 좀 궁금한 점이, 각국의 지식재산권 관련 법안이 다 다른데 국가별로 이렇게 법이 다르면 발생되는 문제도 있을 것 같은데, 이 부분에 대한 대응책은 어떤 게 있으신지 궁금합니다.
Yeah, it's a very important question to address, and luckily for us and for copyright in general, which is where we're focused, is copyright law, the problem has existed for a very long time. So if I'm the creator of BTS, right, if I'm Bang, right, then of course I don't want people in the US, I'm Korean, right, so I don't want people in the US to be able to use my songs just because they're not in Korea. And same thing for Nintendo. They created Pikachu. Well, they don't want Pikachu to be used all over India without anyone's permission, just because it's a different country than Japan, right? So I think that this has been a problem that has existed for a very long time. So that means that luckily there have been approaches to solve this problem. And what we rely on is this, the countries around the world have already sort of met to agree upon a basic framework for copyright law. So enforcement definitely differs from country to country. There are many differences, but the core of what copyright law represents, that's similar. And that was actually set in 1886. There was this big international conference. Over 200 countries, or around 200 countries, attended this conference to basically harmonize their copyright systems. And so what we've designed on the legal side of our product is very much, it's based around the US system, but it's intended to work very, very well across most countries. Because at the end of the day, just because you created something in one country doesn't mean that every other country should be able to use your IP. So we sort of leverage the existing frameworks that have been already established internationally.
최근에 이제 미국 바이든 정부가 AI 생성물을 구분하는 기술 개발에 대한 행정명령을 내렸고, 유럽도 연말부터 AI 워터마크가 의무화되고, 한국도 AI 제작물에 대한 워터마크 적용을 추진 중이고, 최근에 또 한국에서는 딥페이크 문제가 좀 심각하게 나오는 상황인데, 이 부분에 대한 스토리 프로토콜의 좀 대응책 말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
I think that the existing or new regulations and new technologies like watermarking are extremely important. So story, the way that we think about our technology, I'll use an analogy. It's a little bit like SMTP. And SMTP is sort of the simple mail transfer protocol. So it's the protocol that unites all email. So when you use, any email, like with Gmail, Yahoo, whatever it is, it's all using SMTP. But the thing about SMTP as a protocol is that it doesn't actually know what the content is that you're sending. It just tells you how to structure that content, how to format it. And so I could send you a spam email, and SMTP doesn't know, it doesn't care, it's invisible. So when email first came out, people started spamming because you have all this content, and you can now send content to anyone for free. You just send them to their email. So why don't you send spam? And now from a user perspective, you're maybe getting 99 spam emails for every one real email. And that's a big problem for the user. But SMTP, what they did was they allowed people to build spam filters on top of that. So Gmail built their own spam filter, and then Yahoo built their own spam filter. And the product that won was a product that built the better spam filter, right? So it's actually an app, almost like a service on top of SMTP. SMTP, the protocol, is very neutral so that as many applications can integrate it with it as easily as possible, but then each application will build its own spam filter. The way we think about it as Story is that watermarking, these EU, US regulations that help discover ground truth, they're part of the solution, and they're sort of like the spam filter for Story protocol. Story protocol, we allow people to register content. That can be AI generated content. A lot of art is going to be AI generated, and in my opinion, AI generated art is still real art that takes effort and should be protected. But then people will also want to know, well, is this AI generated or is this human generated, right? That might be a question people want to ask. And I think that watermarking and other solutions can sort of build on top of Story in the same way that a spam filter built on top of email to help extend its services. So personally speaking, I think that all of this is building towards a set of solutions that will together drive towards a positive vision for AI. I don't think there's a single technology. I don't think Story alone or watermarking alone or any of these things in isolation will generate a solution. So it's very energizing and inspiring for me to see that there's actually a lot of progress happening on other fronts as well.
마지막으로 앞으로의 계획과 포부 좀 말씀 부탁드리고.
And what we're thinking about at Story, there's really one major milestone for us that we're really pushing towards, and that's to launch. Right now we're in beta. So all of the products and services and creators that are using us, it's more of like a testing mode. Obviously we have a lot of commitments for people to transition from testing to the actual general available version. But that beta to full-fledged product to fully functioning product, that's going to happen in the next few months. So everyone on the engineering side is working very hard to make that happen. And then, when we flip that switch, it's going to be real value, real money, real IP, real legally binding too. So that's a big transition from here's a testing environment just to see if things are working in this beta mode to go into something that's fully productionized. And so we're going to arrive around there by the end of the year or very early next year. And that's when I think, things get exciting because now people are creators are actually protecting their IP. They're actually growing their content. They're generating real revenue on our platform. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. Of course, that's more of a technical milestone for us on the ecosystem side. It's really about building trust with some of the biggest IPs in the world, right? Can we go to Hollywood? Can we come here to Seoul? And can we actually build trust with these creators that this is going to help them, right? And try to communicate the technology in a way that's easy to understand. So when we talk to partners, we don't usually use the word blockchain, especially if they're not familiar, because it's really not about the technology, right? It's not about, what fancy technology do I have under the hood? It's about what are the benefits for you. So as we get better at communicating those benefits and making them more tangible, and as we have a few success cases to show, then I think that will be the main priority for us is to how do we educate and inspire people to join our platform.
마지막으로 저희 파이낸셜 뉴스 독자분들께 한 말씀 부탁드립니다.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to, let me share more about Story's journey. It's been really fun. I've spent a couple weeks here in Seoul, and it's very inspiring for me to be here because, and very important for Story to actually have a presence here because Seoul is the place where I think it's a new global capital of creativity. If you look at what's happening in K-drama, K-pop, with Parasite, Squid Game, I think it's just the place where the most interesting new IPs are being created. In the US, we have very strong IPs as well, as you know, from Harry Potter to Marvel, but they are not new, right? So if you look at all the movies, it's all sequels. It's like Spider-Man 5, it's Avengers 6, so you're just making sequels of the same IP. But I think here in Korea, there's a lot of new and dynamic content coming out from every genre. So that's really exciting. And then here, in my time here, I've also been able to meet a lot of inspiring engineers and builders coming out of universities like Seoul National and KAIST. And I think that what's exceptional and has a lot of potential is this combination of some of the world's best creativity, but also some of the world's best engineering and technology. And I think that's why, I've been very inspired by my time here. An open invitation for everyone who's able to see this. I think the most important thing for Story is to have the best creators and the best entrepreneurs in the world using our technology. So I think Korea has a lot of both. And I would just invite you to explore more, and you can always reach out to me to learn more about what we're doing. And thanks again for the opportunity.
네, 오늘 저희 파이낸셜 뉴스 AI 월드 2024에서 스토리 프로토콜의 공동 창업자인 제임스 자오 인터뷰 나눠봤습니다. 앞으로도 저희 파이낸셜 뉴스는 AI와 관련된 다양한 소식들 생생하게 전달드리도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Very good question.